There's a war going on right now, and you're in the middle of it. No, not in a battlefield. Not with tanks, swords, or bullets. But in your career. Your relationships. Your self-discipline. Your decisions. Every single day, you wake up and step into a world that demands strategy, clarity, patience, and courage. And if you don't have a plan, you lose by default. That's why The Art of War, written more than 2,500 years ago by the Chinese general Sun Tzu, is still one of the most powerful books ever created. Because this isn't a book about war. It's a book about winning. And in this full breakdown here on Compact Wisdom, we're going far beyond the typical surface-level quotes. We're going deep. We'll explore the real strategies, the mindset shifts, and the subtle wisdom that can give you an edge in every area of life, from business to personal growth to handling pressure when it matters most. By the end of this video, you'll know how to think like a strategist. You'll understand how to take control of your energy, your time, your enemies, and most importantly, your own mind. Stick around, because I'm going to open a few loops that will close later, including how to win battles without even fighting, how to break your enemy's will before the first move, and how to turn weakness into dominance using nothing but clarity. This book isn't about being aggressive. It's about being aware. It's not about overpowering. It's about outsmarting. It's not about control. It's about mastery. Let's dive into the ancient wisdom of Sun Tzu and discover how to become unbeatable in the battles you're already fighting every day. Part 1. Know yourself, know your enemy. If you know the enemy and know yourself, you need not fear the result of 100 battles. That's the line. One of the most quoted lessons from The Art of War. But here's the thing. People throw it around without really understanding how deep it goes. Sun Tzu wasn't just talking about armies. He was talking about your inner world, your mindset, your behavior, and how that reflects in every move you make, especially under pressure. Let's break it down. When Sun Tzu says, know yourself, he's not talking about your personality type or your favorite color. He means something way more serious. He means understanding how you react when you're tested. He means recognizing your patterns. Where you hesitate, where you overcommit, where you play small out of fear or lash out from ego. Do you know your triggers? Do you know what makes you spiral, what makes you stall, what makes you self-sabotage? Because if you don't, then guess what? Your enemy already has an advantage. They'll use that against you. Not always deliberately, but effectively. Sun Tzu believed that self-awareness is a weapon, one of the sharpest. Before a general goes to war, he studies terrain, supply chains, climate, troop readiness, everything. And yet, most of us go into our biggest life decisions with no preparation. We react based on emotion, pride, anxiety, or insecurity, and then we wonder why we lose ground we could have defended. But now flip it. Once you begin to know yourself, deeply, you develop what Sun Tzu would call invisible strength. It's not that things stop affecting you. It's that they stop controlling you. You know when to hold back, when to strike, and when to walk away. You gain what the ancient masters called detachment, which isn't coldness, it's clarity. And clarity, in high-stakes moments, is more dangerous than power. Then comes the other half, know your enemy. This isn't always a person. Sometimes your enemy is a bad habit, a toxic environment, a distraction that keeps pulling you off your mission. It might even be your old self, the version of you that keeps pulling you back into comfort, procrastination, or fear. But when it is a person, in business, relationships, leadership, negotiations, Sun Tzu is clear. The goal isn't to fight them head-on. It's to understand them better than they understand themselves. What do they want? What are they afraid of? What will make them panic? This isn't manipulation. This is strategy. You can't influence what you don't understand. In war, the general who rushes into battle without understanding the enemy's mind is already defeated, even if he has the bigger army. The same goes for life. You can be louder, faster, stronger, and still lose to someone with more insight. And insight comes from stillness, from paying attention, from listening more than you speak. Sun Tzu was obsessed with intelligence gathering, not gossip, not assumptions, real knowledge. He believed that most battles were won before the first move, through information. So here's the practical side for you. Next time you're in a negotiation, a conflict, or a decision-making moment, pause. Ask yourself 2 questions. 1. What's going on inside me right now? What's driving me? Clarity or emotion? 2. What's the other side really after? What do they want to protect, gain, or avoid? Those 2 questions alone can change the outcome of almost any confrontation. Because once you understand both sides, you're not just reacting. You're positioning. Sun Tzu believed that positioning beats power. And that starts by seeing everything clearly, especially yourself. So if you want to win in life, you have to start with the internal battle. The one that happens before anything even begins. Master your inner terrain, and you'll stop being surprised by the storms outside. Know yourself. Know your enemy. And you'll win every time. Part 2. The Power of Preparation. Sun Tzu said it straight. Every battle is won or lost before it is ever fought. Read that again. It's not during, not after, but before. This isn't just about war. It's about everything. That job interview. That critical conversation. That speech. That launch. That test. That goal you keep pushing forward. By the time you step into the arena, your preparation has already decided which direction things will go. And that's exactly why most people lose. They show up hoping to figure things out on the spot. They rely on talent, emotion, momentum, instinct. And sometimes it works. But when it doesn't, they're caught flat-footed, unprepared, and out of options. Sun Tzu wasn't against action. He just didn't believe in impulsive action. His philosophy was built on the idea of calculated dominance, a kind of still, quiet confidence that comes from knowing you've done your homework. In fact, one of the core ideas in the art of war is deception, not as a trick, but as a tool of positioning. When you're prepared, you don't need to shout. You don't need to threaten. You simply move with such purpose and timing that the other side doesn't even realize what's happening until it's too late. And that only happens through preparation. But here's where people get it twisted. Preparation isn't just about rehearsing. It's about gathering intelligence, knowing the landscape, understanding the players, preparing not just for what you expect, but for what you don't. Sun Tzu put it like this: if you know the terrain and the enemy and yourself, you will not be imperiled in 100 battles. That terrain, that's your environment, your situation, the people involved, the market, the timing, the conditions. You can have the best strategy in the world, but if you don't adapt it to the terrain, you'll fall hard. That's why flexibility is part of preparation. Rigidity is a form of laziness. Clarity is what gives you range. Let's apply this to real life. If you're going into a meeting, did you study who will be there? What they care about? What they're afraid of? What language they use? If you're launching a project, do you know what's trending? What your competitors are doing? What your audience really wants beneath the surface? Because when Sun Tzu talks about winning beforehand, he means this: victory isn't luck. It's layers of invisible work. The kind nobody sees. The kind you don't post. The kind that happens in quiet rooms, late nights, boring moments. It's mental reps. It's scenario planning. It's emotional rehearsals for conversations that haven't even happened yet. And that work builds confidence. Not the loud, arrogant kind. The grounded kind. The kind that lets you sit in silence while everyone else scrambles. The kind that makes you deadly when it matters. Another key here: Sun Tzu never romanticized battle. He wasn't excited to fight. His highest goal was to win without fighting at all. That's the real flex. That's where preparation becomes so strong that the other side surrenders before things escalate, because they can already see that you've covered every angle. So the takeaway is simple, but powerful. When something matters, don't wing it. Prepare with intention. Know the people. Study the variables. Understand the energy in the room. Build a plan, and a backup plan, and another backup plan. But stay light on your feet. Because preparation doesn't mean clinging to a script. It means being ready for anything. The paradox here is beautiful. The more prepared you are, the less you'll need to fight. Because when you carry yourself with that level of grounded confidence, people feel it. And that energy alone shifts the balance of power before a single word is said. So next time you have something big coming, don't just show up. Study the terrain. Know yourself. Know your enemy. Prepare. And walk in knowing the battle's already yours. Part 3. Winning without fighting. The supreme art of war is to subdue the enemy without fighting. This is where Sun Tzu flips the entire idea of victory on its head. To him, the greatest victory isn't the one won with force. It's the one achieved through influence, positioning, and control. So effective, so subtle, that the battle ends before it begins. The true strategist doesn't need to overpower his opponent. He outthinks him. He repositions the playing field. He shifts the perception of power so that the opponent chooses to back down. Let that sink in. The opponent chooses to surrender. It's not weakness. It's strategy at its highest form. And it's exactly the opposite of what most people do in life. We get emotional. We react. We argue. We escalate. Because we think that fighting back is how we prove our strength. But Sun Tzu says, the moment you step into a fight that could have been avoided, you've already lost something. Time, energy, leverage, clarity, and sometimes even respect. He wasn't a pacifist. He just understood the cost of battle. Even when you win, there's damage, collateral, burnout, enemies you didn't need, resources you can't get back. That's why he emphasized deterrence over destruction. It's like this: if a lion walks into the room, it doesn't need to roar. Its presence is enough. That's what Sun Tzu means by subduing the enemy without fighting. You win before the confrontation, because you've controlled the terms of engagement. So how does this apply to your life? Let's say you're in a leadership role. You've got people pushing back, challenging your decisions. The amateur strategy is to flex power, raise your voice, assert authority, maybe even punish. But the strategic move: understand their motivation. Address their concerns quietly. Reframe the situation in a way that makes them feel heard and realigned. Result: no blow-up, no damage, no ego bruised. And you still got what you needed. Or think about your personal life. Someone throws shade, pushes your buttons. You could clap back and turn it into a full-on war of egos. But sometimes, silence speaks louder. Calmness disarms. Indifference removes fuel. The moment they see you can't be provoked, you've already won. This is not weakness. It's control. And that's what most people don't understand. The need to fight often comes from insecurity, from the fear of looking weak, from the ego needing to defend itself. But real strength is measured by your ability to stay centered when others lose balance. Sun Tzu was obsessed with the idea of winning without losing anything. And that only happens when your presence, your strategy, and your mindset are so solid that the battle never escalates. Not because you ran away, but because you left no weakness to attack. And this ties back to what we discussed in Part 1 and 2. When you know yourself, when you prepare fully, and when you understand the terrain, you make fighting unnecessary. The people who get into constant battles, they don't know themselves. They don't prepare. They walk blind into situations and are forced to fight their way out. But the strategist? He's always 10 moves ahead. He doesn't need to wrestle, because he already won at the level of structure. Sun Tzu also said, to capture the enemy's entire army is better than to destroy it. Why? Because total destruction creates long-term consequences. Grudges, trauma, retaliation. But intelligent influence, that creates respect, control, peace. The goal is not to crush, it's to convert, to redirect force, not absorb it. In practical terms, that means learning to read the room. Knowing when to speak and when to be silent. It means asking, do I really need to fight this? Can I win by letting them underestimate me? Can I shape this in a way where they don't even realize I'm winning? That's mastery. So the next time you're tempted to react, pause. Ask yourself, what's the most elegant way to win this? Not the loudest. Not the most aggressive. The most strategic. That's where real power lives. You don't need to fight to win. You just need to be undeniably prepared, calm under pressure, and 10 steps ahead. And when you're all three, the fight never happens. Part 4. Use energy, not force. Sun Tzu said, "The expert in battle moves the enemy, and is not moved by him." In other words, the true strategist doesn't push harder. He positions better. He doesn't force outcomes. He channels energy. This idea is everywhere in the art of war. Sun Tzu keeps pointing to the difference between force, which is raw, exhausting, direct, and energy, which is intelligent, responsive, precise. He compares good strategy to water, because water adapts to whatever it touches. It flows through cracks. It wears down mountains. It never resists. It redirects. And here's the key. Force relies on effort. Energy relies on leverage. Most people go through life using force. They push harder at work. Hustle longer hours. Argue louder. Stress more. They treat life like a grind, thinking success will come if they just squeeze harder. But that's not strategy. That's exhaustion. Sun Tzu's wisdom flips this entirely. He teaches that the way to dominate isn't by trying to break through, it's by learning to move around. To read the moment. To align with momentum. To use what already exists and turn it in your favor. It's like martial arts. The master doesn't try to outmuscle you. He waits for your move, and then redirects your force against you. He lets you lose balance on your own. That's what Sun Tzu meant by letting the enemy defeat themselves. You don't push. You pull. You watch. You wait. And when the moment's right, you strike clean. No wasted motion. No struggle. Just precision. Let's bring this into the real world. Say you're working on a big project. There's resistance everywhere. Deadlines, friction, chaos. The instinct. Push harder. Stay up later. Get louder. But what if instead you stepped back and asked, "Oh, what's the actual block here? Oh, where's the tension coming from? Is this a timing issue? A people issue? A misunderstanding?" Instead of muscling through, you shift perspective. You find the weak point, the opening, and you move through it. You use flow, not force. Same goes for conflict. Someone's trying to provoke you. The usual move is to engage, debate, defend. But what if you let them speak, say their piece, and then use their own energy to make your point land softly but decisively? That's the art of channeling energy. And Sun Tzu takes it even deeper. He talks about shaping the enemy's perception. He says, when able to attack, we must seem unable. When using our forces, we must appear inactive. When we are near, we must make the enemy believe we are far away. This isn't deception for ego. It's strategy for peace. Because when your opponent believes you're weak, they drop their guard. And when they do, the effort needed to win drops drastically. The less resistance you meet, the less force you need. That's what energy gives you. Leverage. And leverage is freedom. It's the difference between grinding for every inch and gliding through opportunities because you were ready, aligned, and efficient. Here's how to bring this mindset into your day-to-day. Stop forcing outcomes. Learn to sense the flow of a situation. What's opening? What's closing? What can you do with less effort but more effect? Choose timing over pressure. Rushing is a form of self-sabotage. Patience is power in disguise. Let others burn themselves out. While they push harder, you position smarter. While they chase attention, you build presence. And most of all, move like water. That means staying adaptable. Soft where needed. Sharp where it counts. Calm even when challenged. Sun Tzu didn't win with strength. He won with awareness, timing, and restraint. Because when you master energy, you don't need to overpower anything. You just outmaneuver it. Part 5. Timing is everything. Sun Tzu didn't say, act fast. He said, he who is prudent and lies in wait for an enemy who is not, will be victorious. That's timing. In war, you don't attack just because you're ready. You attack because they're not. That sounds obvious, but it's a lesson most people learn the hard way. Because we live in a world obsessed with speed. Launch fast, answer fast, respond fast, move fast. But Sun Tzu wasn't interested in fast. He was interested in right. The right moment. The right window. The right emotional state. The right conditions. He believed that a brilliant strategy, executed at the wrong time, becomes a failure. But a simple move, done at the right moment, can shift everything. That's why he constantly references waiting, watching, and striking only when it's time. Not because he was passive, but because he understood rhythm. He treated warfare like music. You don't just play the right notes, you hit them at the right time. And that applies to your life more than you realize. Think about it. How many times have you made the right decision, just too soon? Or had the right message, but said it in the wrong moment? Timing isn't luck. It's a skill. And like any skill, it starts with awareness. Sun Tzu constantly advises, observe the signs. The signs could be in the opponent's formation, or in their tone, their posture, their habits. It could be in the weather, the terrain, the mood of the troops. In your life, those signs show up as tension in a conversation, hesitation from a client, silence in a meeting, or even your own inner resistance. He calls this calculating victory. It's the art of knowing when not to act. The courage to hold back when everything in you wants to rush. There's a story in the book of how a great general kept his troops hidden behind a hill while the enemy marched for days. They were exhausted, exposed, and overconfident. The general waited. Waited while his soldiers rested, hydrated, and studied. And when the enemy was at their weakest, tired, arrogant, unaware, he struck. Once. Decisively. Game over. That's not luck. That's timing multiplied by preparation. It's the same in negotiations. The deal you want might not happen this week. But if you push now, you lose leverage. If you wait, if you stay in tune, if you pay attention, the other side might come to you. On your terms. In relationships, timing can make or break a conversation. You might be right. But if you bring it up in the wrong moment, you don't just lose the argument. You lose connection. The mature strategist asks, what's the emotional weather right now? Is this moment loaded or light? Am I acting from impatience or from precision? Sun Tzu said, opportunities multiply as they are seized. But the secret is, they have to be seized at the right time. Jump too early and the door's still locked. Jump too late and it's already closed. But catch the timing, and the door doesn't just open, it opens wide. Here's how to train this in your own life. Don't rush to act, rush to observe. Watch what people do, not just what they say. Look for openings, not just results. Feel the rhythm. Every situation has a pulse. Conversations have flow. Projects have waves. Time your actions with the current, not against it. A strength isn't just movement, it's stillness. Sometimes the strongest move is to wait. Not out of fear, out of clarity. And most importantly, master timing, and you reduce your need to struggle. Because when the moment is right, resistance fades. The path clears. And what felt impossible yesterday happens effortlessly. Part 6. Lead with presence, not fear. Sun Tzu never yelled. He didn't command by raising his voice or ruling with fear. He led by reading the room, by sensing what his men needed, and by making decisions that inspired trust. His strength wasn't in pressure, it was in presence. One of his most powerful quotes is this, a leader leads by example, not by force. Let that land for a second. He doesn't say, a leader should be respected. He doesn't say, a leader should demand loyalty. He says, lead by example, and let the rest take care of itself. In other words, if you have to convince people that you're the leader, you're not. Real leadership is felt. It doesn't need to be announced. Sun Tzu believed that the energy of a general shaped the morale of the entire army. If the general was calm, the troops were calm. If he panicked, they collapsed. His posture, his tone, his silence, it all echoed across the battlefield like ripples. And this applies to us more than we think. Whether you're a CEO, a teacher, a parent, a creator, or just someone trying to live with more intention, you're a leader to someone. You set the tone. You show the way. You define what's okay and what's not by what you say, but by what you do and how you do it. And this is where presence becomes your greatest weapon. Sun Tzu was obsessed with discipline. He knew that no army could function without order. But order didn't mean cruelty. It meant clarity. Clarity of expectations. Clarity of strategy. Clarity of purpose. He once demonstrated this by giving a military drill to a group of palace maids. At first, they giggled and didn't take it seriously. So what did he do? He repeated the orders, slowly, clearly, calmly. When they still laughed, he calmly executed 2 of the maids who were chosen as commanders. Now, this moment sounds harsh. It is. But it shows something deeper. Sun Tzu didn't lead with emotion. Not with ego. Not with attachment. He led with alignment to a greater mission. And the lesson isn't to be cruel, it's to be clear. You can't lead if you're constantly bending your standards to avoid discomfort. You can't lead if your principles vanish when people push back. You can't lead if your energy is chaotic, uncertain, reactive. Presence isn't something you project, it's something you become. And people feel it instantly. We've all been in rooms where someone enters and shifts the energy without saying a word. That's not status. That's groundedness. It's the quiet strength of someone who's already done the inner work, who doesn't need to prove anything. And that's what real leaders carry. And here's something Sun Tzu knew that most modern leaders forget. Fear wears off. Respect lasts. If people follow you out of fear, they'll follow you until they find someone stronger, or until they stop being afraid. But if they follow you because they trust you, because you're aligned with a mission, because you show up the same way when things go wrong, then you've built something unshakable. This kind of leadership starts with how you lead yourself. Do you keep your word when nobody's watching? Do you stay calm when plans fall apart? Do you show up with presence, even when you don't feel 100%? Because the army doesn't follow the general's words. They follow his energy. His decisions, his center. So if you want to lead like Sun Tzu, get clear on what you stand for, and never drift from that. Speak less. Watch more. And when you do speak, speak with weight. Lead by being, not by commanding. And remember that presence isn't about being the loudest. It's about being the stillest one in the storm. Because when you lead with presence, not fear, you don't need to push people. They move with you. Part 7. Master yourself. Win anything at first glance. The Art of War seems like a book about defeating others. But if you really study it, line by line, between the words, you realize something deeper. Sun Tzu wasn't teaching people how to conquer enemies. He was teaching them how to conquer themselves. Because in the end, the real battlefield is never out there. It's inside you. Inside the voice that says, "You're not ready." Inside the fear that makes you hesitate. Inside the pride that makes you overreach. Inside the ego that makes you chase battles you should have walked away from. Sun Tzu knew that external victory always follows internal mastery. And that's why, throughout the Art of War, he keeps repeating the same message in different forms. A know yourself, a remain calm, a choose your battles, a stay aware, be disciplined, a never act from emotion, a win before you fight. Those aren't war tactics. They're mindset disciplines. They're the foundations of self-leadership. Because when you know who you are, you stop walking into the wrong fights. When you master your emotions, no one can provoke you into foolish action. When you study the terrain of life with patience, you stop stepping into traps. And when you prepare with clarity and move with intention, you don't need to prove your power, you just become it. Sun Tzu's greatest lesson isn't about war. It's about wisdom. And wisdom, in his world, isn't knowing more, it's doing less, better. It's pausing before reacting. It's observing before deciding. It's waiting when others rush. It's walking away when your ego says, go. It's finishing things quietly instead of trying to win loudly. The real masters of life don't fight because they're weak. They avoid conflict because they're free. They don't need to dominate. They don't need to perform. They simply understand the game better than everyone else, and they move with precision. You see it in top performers, in elite athletes, in high-level entrepreneurs. The best ones are never frantic. They're focused. They're consistent. They're calm. They've learned that the most powerful position in any battle is control over your own state. And that's what Sun Tzu leaves us with. Your mind is your command center. If you don't train it, enemies will take it over. Fear, doubt, comparison, rage, laziness. But if you do train it, if you sharpen it every day with awareness, with discipline, with clarity, then no matter what battlefield you enter, you're already winning. Because the person who wins the war is not the one who fights the most. It's the one who needs to fight the least. So now you see it, the art of war isn't about war at all. It's about the art of self-mastery, the art of seeing clearly, acting wisely, moving with purpose. Sun Tzu wrote it for generals. But the real power is how it speaks to creators, leaders, thinkers, strivers, people like you, walking into daily battles that no one else sees. And now you have the tools to win them. Let me ask you, which part of this hit you hardest? Which battle in your life could be won, not by force, but by positioning, clarity, or presence? Drop it in the comments. I'd love to hear your insights. And if you want to go deeper, don't stop here. Grab the full book The Art of War through the affiliate link in the description. It supports this channel and gives you direct access to timeless wisdom that's as relevant today as ever. If this breakdown spoke to you, hit that subscribe button. Join the compact wisdom community, where we turn timeless ideas into clear action. One book, one battle, one mindset shift at a time. And remember, the strongest don't show off their strength. They just move like they can't be stopped. Now go win your next battle. Not with force, with wisdom. See you in the next one.